My name is Rachel. 5 years ago, my life was different. My husband Mark and I had just welcomed our daughter Lily into the world. She was perfect, bright eyes, infectious laugh, and a grip so strong she could hold onto your finger for hours. But when Lily turned 2, we noticed something was wrong. She was not reaching her milestones. She was not speaking. And when other children her age were running around playgrounds, Lily struggled to walk without falling. After months of tests, specialists, and sleepless nights, we received a diagnosis. Lily had a rare neurological condition that affected her speech and motor functions. The doctors explained that while Lily understood everything around her, she would likely never speak and would always struggle with movement. Our hearts broke, but our resolve strengthened. This was our daughter. We would give her the life she deserved. We transformed our home into a safe haven for Lily. We installed ramps at every entrance. We widened doorways to accommodate her wheelchair. We created sensory spaces where she could experience joy on her terms. Our lives revolved around therapies, doctor appointments, and fighting with insurance companies. It was exhausting, but Lily was worth every battle. Last year, Mark received a job offer we could not refuse. Better pay, better benefits, and most importantly, access to a specialized therapy center for Lily. The catch? We had to move across the state to a new neighborhood called Oakwood Estates, a neighborhood with an active homeowners association. It will be fine, Mark assured me. The schools are great and the neighborhood is safe. That is all that matters. I should have known better. The warning signs appeared the very day we moved in. As movers carried our furniture inside, a woman approached me. Her blonde hair was cut into a perfect bob. Her clothes looked like they belonged in a catalog, and her smile never quite reached her eyes. "Karen Mills," she said, extending a manicured hand. "HOA president, welcome to Oakwood." I thanked her, distracted by directing the movers with Lily's specialized furniture. "That is quite a lot of medical equipment," she observed, eyeing the wheelchair ramp being installed at our front door. "Yes, our daughter has special needs," I explained. "Well," she said, her tone shifting slightly, "just make sure everything is properly approved. We have standards here." I nodded politely, not really listening. I was focused on getting settled, on making this new house feel like home for Lily. I did not realize I was meeting the woman who would soon become our worst nightmare. The citations began 2 weeks after we moved in. First, it was our grass being half an inch too tall. Then it was trash cans visible from the street. Each violation came with a fine and a personal visit from Karen. Each time, she would glance past me into our home, her eyes lingering on Lily's mobility equipment with barely disguised disgust. "The ramp at your front door was not approved," she said one afternoon, handing me yet another notice. "It is for my daughter," I explained, keeping my voice level. "She cannot navigate stairs." "Rules are rules," she replied coldly. "You need to submit proper paperwork and wait for approval." I did submit the paperwork. I submitted medical documentation. I cited the Americans with Disabilities Act. I believed naively that reason would prevail, that Karen was simply a stickler for procedure, that once she understood our situation, she would back off. I was wrong. The defining moment came on a sunny Tuesday. I was helping Lily practice with her communication tablet in our front yard when Karen marched across the street toward us. "Your daughter's presence is disturbing the neighborhood aesthetic," she hissed, leaning close so only I could hear. "People move here for a certain lifestyle, not to live next to a special needs facility." I felt my blood turn to ice. This was not about rules or property values. This was about my child, about her very existence being viewed as undesirable. "You need to leave," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "Now." She straightened, smoothed her jacket, and smiled that terrible smile. "This is not over, Rachel, not by a long shot." As I watched her walk away, I felt a chill run down my spine. Karen was not just annoying or difficult, she was dangerous, and she had set her sights on my family. The following weeks brought an escalation I could never have imagined. Every Monday morning, like clockwork, a new violation notice appeared on our door. According to Karen, our house had peeling paint that did not exist. Our fence was leaning, though it stood perfectly straight. We were allegedly running an illegal business because Lily's in-home therapist visited 3 times a week. Each violation carried a fine. Each fine increased in amount. I began documenting everything, taking photos of our property daily to disprove her claims, keeping copies of every notice, recording the dates and times of her visits. I was building a case, though I was not sure yet who would hear it. When Karen claimed our wheelchair ramp violated building codes, she escalated beyond the HOA. She called the county inspector, who arrived unannounced one morning. I explained our situation, showed him our permits and medical documentation. The inspector, to his credit, was understanding. "Everything looks compliant to me, ma'am," he told me. "This ramp meets all required specifications." As he left, I noticed Karen watching from across the street, phone in hand, lips pressed into a thin line. She had expected the inspector to side with her. She had expected us to be forced to remove Lily's access to our own home. Mark had remained calm throughout all of this, believing that reasoned discussion could resolve the conflict. But after the inspector incident, even his patience wore thin. He approached Karen one evening as she was checking mailboxes, another of her self-appointed neighborhood monitoring duties. "We need to talk about this situation," he said calmly. "There must be a way to resolve these issues without constant confrontation." Karen immediately pulled out her phone and began recording him. "I do not feel safe right now," she declared loudly, though Mark stood several feet away with his hands visible at his sides. "You are harassing me. There are witnesses." There were no witnesses except me, watching from our driveway, stunned by her performance. "I will be filing for a restraining order," she announced. "You need to back away from me immediately." Mark returned home, bewildered and angry. "She is unhinged," he told me, "completely unhinged." The next day, neighbors began avoiding us. People who had previously waved or stopped to chat now hurried past our house with eyes averted. I later learned that Karen had sent a community-wide email claiming that Mark had threatened her and that our family was destabilizing the neighborhood. We were being isolated, marked as troublemakers, and Karen was winning. The lowest point came when Karen appeared uninvited at our doorstep one Saturday morning. I opened the door to find her standing there with 2 other HOA board members, men I had never met who looked uncomfortable to be there. "The board has received numerous complaints about your property," Karen announced, not bothering with pleasantries, "and more concerning about your daughter's disruptive behavior." "What disruptive behavior?" I demanded, blood rushing to my face. "My daughter cannot speak." "The noises," Karen said, waving her hand dismissively. "The moaning, the medical equipment. It is disturbing residents trying to enjoy their properties." The sound she referred to was Lily's way of expressing joy, a soft, musical humming she made when content. It was barely audible beyond our own yard. "This is discrimination," I said flatly. "You are targeting my family because my daughter has a disability." "We are enforcing the covenants that you agreed to when you purchased this property," Karen replied, her voice sickly sweet. "Perhaps this neighborhood is not the right fit for your situation." After they left, I sat at our kitchen table and cried for the first time since this nightmare began. Then I got angry, really angry. I drafted a formal complaint to the HOA board, citing harassment, discrimination under the Fair Housing Act, and violations of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I requested an emergency meeting to address Karen's behavior. The response came 3 days later. The board, headed by Karen herself, had reviewed my complaint and found no evidence of discriminatory practices. Furthermore, they strongly cautioned against making unfounded accusations that could damage the reputation of board members. Karen was the board, she controlled everything, and she had declared war on my family, but I was only just beginning to fight back. April 16th. I will remember that date for the rest of my life. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Lily had finished her lunch macaroni and cheese, her favorite, and I had set her up in her special supportive chair in the living room. Her communication tablet was within reach, and her favorite cartoon was playing on the television. She was safe. She was content. I needed to make a quick grocery run. We were out of milk, bread, and Lily's special protein supplement. The store was only 5 minutes away. I would be gone 15 minutes, 20 at most. "I will be right back, sweetheart," I told her, kissing the top of her head. "Daddy will be home soon, too." Lily hummed her happy sound and focused on the colorful characters dancing across the screen. I grabbed my purse, locked the front door behind me, and drove to the local market. I was gone exactly 17 minutes. I know because I checked the time when I left and when I returned, worried about leaving Lily alone even for that short period. In those 17 minutes, my entire world collapsed. When I pulled into our driveway, I noticed immediately that something was wrong. The front door was open, not just unlocked, wide open, swinging slightly in the breeze. I ran inside, calling Lily's name, though I knew she could not answer. The living room was empty. Her chair was vacant. The television still played her cartoon, the cheerful music now a mocking soundtrack to my panic. "Lily," I screamed, racing through every room of the house. "Lily, where are you?" But I knew something terrible had happened. My daughter was gone. With shaking hands, I called 911. "My daughter is missing," I told the dispatcher, my voice breaking. "She cannot walk without assistance. She cannot speak. Someone has taken her." Police arrived within minutes. As they began searching the house and questioning me, I noticed movement across the street. Karen was sitting on her front porch, watching the scene unfold. She was drinking iced tea, her posture relaxed, almost pleased. "That woman," I told the officer, pointing across the street. "Karen Mills, you need to question her." The officer looked skeptical. "The HOA president? Why would she know anything about this?" "Because she hates us," I said, my voice rising. "She has been harassing us for months. Please just ask her if she saw anything." 2 officers approached Karen's house. I watched as she spoke to them, shaking her head, her expression concerned. When they returned, their faces told me everything I needed to know. "Mrs. Mills says she did not see anything unusual today," the officer reported. "Says she has been home all afternoon working on neighborhood business." But I knew in my heart that Karen was involved. As the police continued their investigation, one officer approached me with news. "Ma'am, Mr. Grayson across the street has a doorbell camera. We are reviewing the footage now." 20 minutes later, my suspicions were confirmed in the most horrifying way possible. The footage showed Karen approaching our house shortly after I left. She knocked, then tried the handle. Finding it locked, she produced a key. Where she got it, I still do not know, and entered. 3 minutes later, she emerged with Lily, guiding my daughter to her white SUV parked in our driveway. "That is kidnapping," I screamed, pointing at the footage playing on the officer's tablet. "She took my daughter, arrest her now." But the response I received left me cold. "Mrs. Mills claims she was helping your daughter," the officer explained uncomfortably. "She says she was concerned about her being left alone and was taking her somewhere safe." "She is lying." I was practically hysterical now. "My daughter has been kidnapped by that woman, and you are standing here making excuses for her." "We will question Mrs. Mills further," the officer assured me. "But without evidence of malicious intent, this could be classified as a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. My disabled daughter had been taken from our home by a woman who had harassed and threatened us for months, and the police were calling it a misunderstanding. When officers went to Karen's house to question her again, they returned with devastating news. Karen and her vehicle were gone, and so was my daughter. The police issued an alert for Lily, but their efforts felt half-hearted. They still seemed to believe this was some kind of neighborhood dispute rather than a serious crime. I could not wait for them to realize the truth. Every minute that passed put Lily in greater danger. I took matters into my own hands. I called every local news station. I posted the doorbell camera footage on social media with Karen's name, photo, and vehicle description. I begged anyone with information to come forward. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, the story was trending. Mothers across the country shared my posts, outraged at both Karen's actions and the lukewarm police response. Find Lily and Karen Kidnapper started trending on social media platforms. As public pressure mounted, the police finally began treating the case with the urgency it deserved. They upgraded Lily's status to missing endangered person and officially listed Karen as a person of interest. But I could not sit at home waiting for updates. I needed to act. I began investigating Karen myself, searching for any clue about where she might have taken my daughter. I created a timeline of everything I knew about Karen Mills. I scoured her social media profiles, looking for family connections, favorite places, anything that might give me insight into where she would go. On her Facebook page, buried in photos from 3 years prior, I found something promising: Karen standing proudly in front of a rustic cabin, captioned "Weekend Getaway at My Little Slice of Heaven." The location tag showed a remote area near the Appalachian Mountains, almost 300 miles away. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. "I am going," I told Mark that night. "I cannot sit here any longer." "The police advised us to stay put in case she contacts us," he reminded me, though I could see the same desperate urgency in his eyes. "She will not contact us," I said firmly. "She took our daughter to punish us, to prove she has power over us. I am going to find that cabin." Mark stayed behind to coordinate with police and manage the growing media presence at our house. I packed a bag, printed the cabin photo, and began the longest drive of my life. The roads grew narrower and more winding as I approached the mountains. Cell service became spotty, then non-existent. I stopped at every gas station, every diner, showing Lily's photo and describing Karen and her vehicle. At a small general store in a town barely big enough to appear on maps, I finally got a lead. "Yeah, I seen that SUV," the elderly clerk told me after studying the picture on my phone. "Woman and a little girl stopped for supplies yesterday, headed up toward Pinecrest Road." My heart raced. They had been here, they might still be nearby. With directions from the clerk, I found the unmarked dirt road that led to several remote cabins. As dusk fell, I spotted it, the cabin from the Facebook photo, nestled among tall pines. No vehicle was visible, but a light glowed dimly inside. I approached cautiously, my entire body trembling with fear and hope. Through a window, I could see the cabin was sparsely furnished but recently occupied. A child's jacket, Lily's jacket, lay discarded on a chair. But the cabin was empty. They were gone. On the kitchen table lay a receipt from a gas station dated that morning, some 50 miles south. Karen was on the move again, taking my daughter further away with each passing hour. I collapsed onto the cabin floor, overcome with grief and exhaustion, but I allowed myself only a moment of weakness. Lily needed me to be strong. I gathered the receipt and Lily's jacket, proof they had been there, and returned to my car. As I drove back down the mountain to areas with cell service, I called the detective assigned to our case. "I found where they were," I said as soon as he answered. "I have evidence, but they are gone now, heading south." For the first time, I heard urgency in his voice. "Stay where you are. We will send local officers to process the cabin. This changes everything." By the time I reached the nearest police station, the story had evolved. Karen Mills was now officially wanted for kidnapping. Her face and my daughter's were on every news channel. The hunt had truly begun. As I gave my statement to local police, my phone rang. It was Mark. "Turn on the news," he said, his voice tight with emotion. The police station had a small television in the corner of the room. I watched as Karen's driver's license photo filled the screen alongside Lily's school picture. The chyron across the bottom read, "Amber Alert, Disabled Child Abducted BY HOA President." The story had exploded nationally. Karen was now one of the most recognizable faces in America. Every law enforcement agency in the region was looking for her white SUV. Every social media platform was flooded with their photos. And then came the first confirmed sighting. A truck driver called the hotline to report seeing a woman and child matching the descriptions at a rest stop near the Tennessee border. The woman was screaming at the little girl, the trucker told reporters later. The child was not responding, just sitting there looking terrified. I approached to ask if everything was okay, and the woman grabbed the girl and rushed her back to a white SUV. That is when I recognized them from the news alert on my phone. By the time state troopers arrived at the rest stop, Karen and Lily were gone. But the truck driver's dashcam had captured clear footage of them. Lily was alive. She appeared physically unharmed, but the fear on her face broke my heart. I raced to the location, driving through the night, stopping only to refuel. By the time I arrived the next morning, police had established a command post and were reviewing security footage from nearby businesses. That is where I met Detective Harris. Unlike the officers who had initially dismissed my concerns, Detective Harris approached the case with both compassion and determination. "I have a daughter about your Lily's age," she told me, her eyes kind but fierce. "We will find her, I promise you that." Detective Harris had specialized in crimes against children for 15 years. She understood what other officers had missed, that Karen's actions were not a misunderstanding or an overreaction. They were calculated, deliberate, and deeply disturbing. "She planned this," Detective Harris explained as we reviewed the timeline. "The key to your house, the remote cabin, the constant movement. Karen Mills is not just running on impulse. She knew exactly what she was going to do." "But why?" I asked, the question that had haunted me since this nightmare began. "Why my daughter?" "Control," Detective Harris said simply. "People like Karen crave control above all else. Your daughter, her disability, your modifications to your home represented something Karen could not control, could not force into her ideal vision. So she decided to remove the problem." The detective's words sent chills through me, but they also helped me understand what we were dealing with, not just a neighborhood busybody, but someone truly dangerous. As the search expanded across state lines, tips flooded in from across the region. Karen's face was too recognizable now for her to show herself publicly. She would be running out of options. That evening, as I sat in a motel room near the command post, staring at maps and trying to guess Karen's next move, my phone rang again. It was Detective Harris. "We have a location," she said, her voice urgent but controlled. "A motel manager recognized her from the news. She checked in under a false name, but he is certain it is her." "Where?" I demanded, already grabbing my keys. "The Blue Pine Motel, about 30 miles from you. Do not go there," she warned. "We have officers moving into position now. Stay where you are. I will call as soon as we have her in custody." But I could not stay put, not when my daughter was so close. I drove toward the motel, staying far enough back to avoid interfering with the police operation. I parked in a gas station lot across the highway, watching as unmarked police vehicles surrounded the small, rundown motel. My phone rang again. Detective Harris. "We are moving in," she said. "Stay in your car." Through the darkness, I could see officers taking positions around one of the ground floor rooms. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The next few minutes were a blur, flashing lights, officers with weapons drawn, a door being forced open. Then my phone rang once more. "We have her," Detective Harris said, her voice thick with emotion. "Lily is safe, come now." I do not remember the drive across the highway to the motel. I only remember running, pushing past officers, scanning every face for my daughter. And then I saw her, sitting in the back of an ambulance, wrapped in a blanket, a female paramedic gently checking her vitals. Her hair was tangled, her clothes were dirty, but she was alive. "Lily," I cried, rushing toward her. Her head snapped up at the sound of my voice. Her eyes widened, and then, for the first time in weeks, I saw my daughter smile. I gathered her into my arms, holding her so tightly I was afraid I might hurt her. She buried her face in my shoulder and made the soft, humming sound that was her way of expressing relief. "I am here now," I whispered, rocking her gently. "I am here, you are safe." The paramedic touched my arm gently. "She appears unharmed physically," she told me. "A bit dehydrated and she could use a good meal, but she is okay." Behind us, I heard a commotion. I turned to see Karen being led from the motel room in handcuffs. Unlike the poised, perfect HOA president I had known, this Karen was disheveled, her designer clothes wrinkled, her bob haircut limp and unwashed. But her eyes, they were the same, cold, calculating, and when they met mine across the parking lot, I saw no remorse, no recognition of the pain she had caused. Instead, she smiled. "I saved her," she called out loud enough for everyone to hear. "She was being neglected. I did what no one else would do." Detective Harris stepped between us, blocking Karen from my view. "Do not listen to her," she advised quietly. "That is not reality, that is delusion." As Karen was placed in a police car, I focused my attention back on Lily. The only thing that mattered was that my daughter was safe, that this nightmare was finally over. Later, at the hospital where Lily was taken for evaluation, Detective Harris filled me in on what they had discovered. "Karen had a bag packed with enough supplies for weeks on the road," she explained. "Maps with routes marked to remote locations across multiple states. She was planning to disappear with Lily for a long time." "Did she say why?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would not satisfy me. "She believes she was rescuing Lily," Detective Harris said, shaking her head. "In her mind, you were unfit parents because of your daughter's disability. She convinced herself she was acting out of concern." "That is not concern," I said bitterly. "That is evil." Detective Harris nodded grimly. "She will face multiple felony charges: kidnapping, child endangerment, breaking and entering. The prosecution will seek maximum penalties." Karen was held without bail, deemed both a flight risk and a danger to the community. As we prepared for the long legal process ahead, I focused on helping Lily recover from her ordeal. The psychological impact was significant. Lily had nightmares. She became anxious when I left her sight, even for a moment. Her therapist explained that while Lily could not verbalize her trauma, she was processing it in other ways. But with time, with love, and with professional support, my daughter began to heal. And so did I. 3 months after Lily's rescue, we sat in a crowded courtroom for the beginning of Karen's trial. She had pleaded not guilty to all charges, maintaining that she had acted out of concern for Lily's welfare. Her defense attorney tried to paint her as a misunderstood Good Samaritan. "My client saw a disabled child left alone and acted to protect her," he argued. "Her methods may have been unorthodox, but her intentions were pure." The prosecution methodically dismantled this narrative. They presented the history of harassment, the HOA violations targeting our disability accommodations, the cabin prepared in advance, the false identities Karen had used while on the run. "This was not a spontaneous act of concern," the prosecutor told the jury. "This was a premeditated abduction by a woman obsessed with control." When it was my turn to testify, I spoke directly to the jury. I told them about Lily's condition, about the modifications to our home that Karen had fought against, about the terror of those weeks not knowing if my daughter was safe. "Karen Mills did not take my daughter because she was concerned," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "She took her because Lily's disability offended her sense of order, because our family did not fit her vision of a perfect neighborhood." Lily's therapist testified about the psychological trauma my daughter had experienced, about the nightmares, the anxiety, the regression in her therapy progress. Throughout the trial, Karen sat impassively, occasionally whispering to her attorney. She never once looked at me directly, never showed a flicker of remorse. After 5 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. As the judge read out the verdict, I felt no joy, only relief. Karen was sentenced to 20 years in prison with no possibility of parole. She would no longer be able to hurt my family or anyone else. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, asking how I felt about the verdict. "Justice was served today," I told them. "But no sentence can erase what happened to my daughter. What matters now is healing." In the aftermath of the trial, we filed a civil lawsuit against the Oakwood Estates HOA for negligence and failure to supervise its leadership. The case never went to trial. The HOA settled for a substantial sum, which we placed in a trust for Lily's future care. More importantly, the settlement required a complete restructuring of the HOA board and mandatory training on fair housing laws and disability accommodations. Slowly, our community began to heal as well. Neighbors who had once avoided us now stopped to check in. Some apologized for not speaking up sooner about Karen's behavior. Others brought meals, offered help, or simply extended friendship. One evening, a month after the trial, our doorbell rang. Outside stood a group of neighbors holding candles. "We wanted to welcome Lily home properly," one woman explained. "If that is okay with you." That night, our front yard filled with people from across the neighborhood. They sang songs. They shared stories. They pledged that nothing like this would ever happen in their community again. Lily watched from our porch, her eyes wide with wonder at the gathering. When a little girl her age approached and offered her a flower, Lily hummed her happy sound and reached out to accept it. It was a small moment, but it represented everything we had fought for: Lily's right to exist in the world exactly as she is. Her right to be different and still belong. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We chose to stay, to reclaim our space, to show Lily that fear should never force you to retreat. The wheelchair ramp remains at our front door. The sensory garden we planted flourishes in our backyard. And the scars, visible and invisible, remind us daily of what we survived. Karen sits in a prison cell. The neighborhood has new leadership, and my daughter is thriving, surpassing her therapist's expectations for recovery. This is not just a story about a villain. It is a story about a mother's fight for her child, about a community that failed, then found redemption, about justice delayed but ultimately delivered. Most of all, it is a story about Lily, a little girl who cannot speak but whose existence spoke volumes about the darkness that can hide behind perfect lawns and neighborhood rules, and about the light that can emerge when that darkness is finally exposed.